Opinions, they can be the biggest blessing and curse at the same goddamn time, can't they? We all have them, we all occasionally like to share them, some of us more enthusiastically than others, and has anyone ever noticed that when it comes to video games, where your opinion falls on a certain game, it can be the difference between the two of you having a jolly good old chinwag, or arch rivals out to shit stomp all over the other dude in a 200 post long thread. But either positive or negative, the internet to me, it just seems to be one huge revolving door of people just validating their opinions against each other, especially among the Final Fantasy fanbase, because be it the daily posts in almost every Final Fantasy group ever made, what's the best FF, and it doesn't stop there, what's the best character, what's the best song, what's the best location, which has the best combat system, and are Tombrees really that terrifying? In which case the answer is always yes. Or the rage, the fad of top 10 videos and YouTubers where if we watch the video we get a sense of enjoyment if their list happens to coincide with what our list would be. Or totally on the flip side, the bitter rage and hit the dislike button if they see a #1 placed that they deem to be terrible. And probably the best example of what I'm talking about is the example of Final Fantasy 15, a Marmite game that came out recently that pretty much split the fan base. Now everywhere is awash with gamers thrashing out their viewpoint, and while this can go down civilly, even lead to a nice discussion, where some are genuinely interested in hearing the other person's opinion, they still respect, even enjoy that different viewpoint. But this is video gamers we're talking about here, people. That scenario there is as rare as a unicorn crossbred with an oglob in my year on YouTube. And it's been a great but crazy year. I've handled basically what boils down to completely subjective material, and what I've observed in a staggering way is the extremes that I'm sure we've also all noticed or even been guilty of at some point, that people will get worked up to in defending their viewpoint. Taking Final Fantasy 15 for example, if I say this, that without a doubt, the best Final Fantasy game ever made, was Final Fantasy 15. How does that make you feel? Search your feelings. And here's a little scale of what a comment like that could split all of you listening to this video into, from jumping with joy in agreement up here, oh my god yes, I love you Pez, all the way down to somebody taking it upon themselves a mission to tell you that my opinion is wrong. Ever seen that? When somebody tries to tell you that your opinion about what game is best is wrong, and if they try to tell you subjectively and you don't back down, that frustrates them because, you know, in the realm of subjectivity they don't have a leg to stand on, then some of them try to take it out of that realm, tell you that factually that opinion can't be correct. We've all seen it. And funny enough, the position that science has somewhat shown will be the least populated is probably the one that most of you listening to this right now think that you are in. Let me guess, here? That's what a lot of people will say, that they're totally indifferent, and that's what a lot of people perceive. And I bet most of you right now think that's the case, and that something as trivial as what another person thinks of a video game doesn't emotionally or psychologically affect you in any way. Well, that's what this video is here to beg to differ on. So we're going to explain why Final Fantasy fans constantly argue over which Final Fantasy is the best. So to continue this video, let's for a moment completely detach ourselves as emotional human beings. And let's observe this phenomena from afar. Because one day after smoking a dubious Maximus, I couldn't help but... Please don't ask me in the comment section what that is. I couldn't help but find this entire notion fascinating. I got thinking about it, and so I went off to find the science of why we constantly argue about which Final Fantasy is the best. Now, there have been thousands of papers done around this type of subject. Different social, psychological, and brain science studies conducted to try and pinpoint this exact topic. But to find out what would be best here, we have to eliminate what most science of opinion papers covers, which I would say in general is why we care about what people think about us. So us directly as people, the way we look, the way we act, everything that's given rise to the crazy beauty industry we have now. Because that's a whole different ballgame involving self-esteem, validation of yourself through others. For example, people with low self-worth are usually, according to the science, that way because they were belittled in childhood by either parents or close family members and continue to hold that opinion stubbornly in the face of everything they've experienced later on in life. And I do say usually, I emphasize usually, because again, with anything like this, there are always exceptions to the rule. There is no rule of law for human psychology, but we're not talking about that. So we're talking about why millions. Hell, if you throw in books, TV series, music, films, sports on top of games, we're actually probably talking billions of people, all giving a damn about what someone else thinks over what ultimately boils down to being a piece of subjective entertainment that in the grand scheme of life is pretty trivial. This beautiful little hobo-haired Homo sapien is going to share with you one study that I found that I think beautifully answers all of this. In June 2010, a team of researchers from the University College of London and Aarhus? Is that supposed to be Aarhus or Aarhus Lich King University? Anyway, a university in Denmark, they uncovered some clues to help explain why we care about what other people think. And why some people care way more than others. So the research is published in the Journal of Current Biology, and taking 28 volunteers, they made each of them write a list of 20 songs they liked but didn't own. So yeah, this is songs, not video games, but in terms of subjective entertainment medium, this will kind of boil down to the same result. And they were asked to rate each song from 1 to 10 on how much they appreciated it. Then they whipped out the old magnetic resonant imaging scans, so MRI scanner, they stuck them in to monitor the participants' brain activity, and the researchers played one song from the participants' list of 20 songs, followed by another unknown song. After hearing the songs, participants were asked to explain which they preferred. After they expressed their own opinions on the music, the researchers then let the participants know that two experts, so fake experts, thought about the two selections. They found that when the participants' opinion coincided with the unknown expert, they didn't know who they were, they never even met. When their opinions coincided, the area of the brain associated with reward, the ventral striatum, lit up with activity. And the more validation they got, the more activity researchers noticed. So they then tried it with both experts. Then when they had both experts agree, the activity in the reward center was even more pronounced than when it was just one who agreed. Oh man, we really are just slaves to our biology, aren't we? And I mean, this goes even further. So the authors of the study then wanted to confirm the effect even further by introducing a more direct reward assessment. In another activity, the participant song choices were then measured by whether or not each song would receive a token. And these tokens were completely randomly assigned to the 20 songs. And yet, when the participants' choices earned them more tokens, the ventral striatum lit up again.
What are you trying to do to me, man?
And directly in correlation to how many tokens they were rewarded. So it was actually measurable, quantifiable. And this wasn't just among a few of them, this was among all of the participants. So it was unanimous across all subjects that the part of the brain associated with reward and motivation lights up, even in primates who have this exact same ventral striatum. Obviously with monkeys, it wasn't favorite video games or songs, but basic reward structures and basic validation through pack mentalities, etc, etc. So yeah, like any consciousness tweaking drug or substance, be it marijuana, be it coffee, a cigarette, a release of a rush of hormones and endorphins we get if we get a compliment from someone of the opposite sex. This is all just a biological response that we go out, we crave, we're driven by our biological responses, and having opinions validated, it just falls under that really big tent. But I wasn't happy with just that answer. So it's all well and good to say every time our opinions are validated, we get a rush of enjoyment from it. But after all, like I said, the video game world can be a harsh place, savage, cruel in fact. And while this explains the positive, what about all that negative? That reviewer who was bold enough to go out there and commit himself to an actual opinion just to wind up being on the receiving end of scorn and anger. Why does he continue doing it? Has it ever felt like everyone in the world except for you hates Final Fantasy 13 or 15, insert basically any game here, and that the vocal minority who often dominate a negative narrative are even more emphatic in being negative than the positive? What about those people? You know the one I'm talking about, the vocal minority, the trolls, the haters, the ragers. You know that one crazy son of a bitch who, despite saying for the last year he hates Final Fantasy 15 with a passion, and yet you still see him arriving daily on Final Fantasy videos, and specifically 15 ones, just to deliver that message. What could drive someone to that kind of what I deem to be madness? And do the rest of us really just wade through all the shit just for that one-off moment where someone agrees with our opinions and we get that rush of validation? Is that feeling of validation, is it that good that it's worth putting up with all the crap for? And it was when I started thinking like that I couldn't just accept this particular study's papers. So I went searching around a bit more, and I found a fantastic one posted just this recently, 2016, emotional dysfunctions in psychopathology and neuropathology. So like any emotions while we do enact things, in the search of getting a positive feeling and brain response. All of those things are just emotion generators, and like any generators, as much as they can go one way, they can go the other. So this paper said the ventral striatum has a prominent role in reward processing with strong connections with other emotion generators. Within this region, they specifically say the nucleus accumbens is active during the anticipation and receipt of monetary and social rewards. And within social validation and validating opinion, we get a positive emotional stimuli in the brain. We also get it for things such as positive faces and pleasant scenes. I think an example they gave is when they showed a picture of somebody the person loves versus one they didn't. Some ugly old bastard like me. And there was a way different response within the ventral striatum. But interestingly, there are some people, they get a response to seeing things like distressing photos. Now, seeing distressing photos can break down into one of two categories. People who see a distressing photo can get a rush of feeling because they get that rush of wanting to help, of compassion, of humanity, and kind of seeing the opportunity to do so gives them a positive rush in their head. So it's kind of weird that way. But with some people, seeing the distress of another person, they actually feed off of it.
They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned, or negotiated with.
So this really explains that way more dark and negative when somebody's trying to berate you endlessly into saying your opinion is shit and what you're saying is ridiculous or your viewpoint is ridiculous, and they see the other person getting worked up in response. They get that exact same ventral striatum light up.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
So there it is, guys. This is a brain response, a brain function that works exactly like a drug, and we are all slaves to it to varying different degrees. Even that study I did previously with the 20 songs, after they did those two experiments, they even then did a third one, and this showed how some people, they just don't fit the mold. While most of them wanted their opinions to be reciprocated by the experts, they actually gave an example where they told the participant what songs the experts were choosing and that they had a choice to change. And while most participants opted not to change and to stick with what the expert said, the study authors found that there were people who changed their opinion purposely to be different from what the experts had said. And they concluded that people who were more likely to be swayed by the expert's opinion were the same people who had exhibited the greatest amounts of activity in the brain's reward center, and that they can not only understand why people are influenced by others' opinions, but by looking in brain activity, they can actually determine who those people are. Damn, and you know what? I don't find that hard to believe. I think we've all seen that hipster, that guy, or no, those people who they purposely want to choose that Final Fantasy that is really unknown. Now, that guy who wants to say Final Fantasy 2 is his favorite because no one else says it, and I don't mean this offensive. I think Americans fall very heavily into this category. You know, having that desire to want to have a controversial opinion, to have a different point of view where you don't feel validation through what the majority think. And a lot of people say that's the sheep mentality. And some people become so opposed to being the sheep mentality that they purposely try to make every way they think and feel go against the grain. And when they find out that their opinion isn't shared by the majority and it is controversial and it is the rogue outlier, they actually get a sense of enjoyment from that. I've got to say, I think I'm even to a certain degree kind of guilty of this myself. I love Final Fantasy and Type 0. I often say equal, but if I had to be truthfully honest, aka if I had to delete one from my memory for all eternity, I'd delete Type 0. Final Fantasy 7 is way more dear to me, but when I get asked directly by someone in the street or a friend who asks me directly, I'll say Type 0. Why do I say it? Because Final Fantasy 7 is just such a common one to say. That's your favorite. So I like to be a little bit more different. I don't know. It probably is mostly just me saying Type 0 because then the person will inevitably ask why, and then I have a chance to talk about it. It's just me angling for a chance to waffle on about it. But there it is. I have held you guys up long enough. What category would you say fall into? Do you like it when somebody agrees with you? Do you usually go against the grain? And really the main message, the main reason I'm doing this video is just because every day I see this. Every day I see Final Fantasy fans who under any other good circumstance would get along well. They'd get along great. But just because one subject came up, that they disagreed on, be it whether Final Fantasy 13 is good, or 15, or 7 is the best, or 6 is the best, and 8. And because they either did or did not get a positive biological response, they're now engaged in a war, making inflammatory posts for the sake of doing it, and basically rustling people's flim-flams. The message is that ultimately, next time you are either yourself doing or seeing it, just tweak in your mind that based on how explosive their response is right now, directly correlates to how much of a slave that individual is to their ventral striatum and their nucleus accumbens. And when you look at it like that, perhaps you may just be able to find it that little bit easier to laugh or shrug it off. Unless, of course, you're one of those other people who get their light up from shitposting, in which case you're going to be shitposting until the day you die, because secretly, and even though you don't want to admit it, you like it. You cheeky little bugger, you. But there it is, guys. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comment section below. Please stimulate my striatum by hitting the like button. Oh, that sounds so wrong. Go home.